Where the river runs, the scent of rain and fresh concrete filled the cavernous space of the unfinished penthouse. Maxwell Hurst moved through the rooms with a proprietary air, his sharp eyes missing nothing, a scuff on the floorboards, a paint drip on a window frame. This building was his latest monument, a 50-story testament to the empire he had built from the ashes of a forgotten childhood. At 38, he was a king in the world of development, but the ghost of the boy who had slept in bus stations and fought for every meal was a permanent resident in his soul. A sound faint but entirely out of place froze him mid-stride. It wasn't the settling of the building or the distant hum of the city below. It was a rustle, coming from the master suite's walk-in closet. His security team had swept the floor. He was supposed to be alone. Every instinct, honed from a life of anticipating threat, went on high alert. He moved silently to the closet door, his hand closing around the cool metal of the handle. He didn't announce himself. He simply pulled the door open and found a ghost. Crouched in the corner, half hidden by a hanging rod, was a girl. She looked heartbreakingly young, 16 at most, with wide, dark eyes that dominated a pale, pinched face. She was surrounded by the meager evidence of her existence: a faded green backpack, a thin sleeping bag rolled with military precision, and a single worn book. For a suspended moment, they simply stared at one another, the billionaire in his custom-tailored coat, and the girl in her grimy, oversized hoodie. Then panic. She moved with a feral swiftness, scrambling to her feet and trying to bolt past him, a frantic energy radiating from her slight frame. Max's reflexes were faster. He didn't grab her. The thought of putting his hands on her felt profoundly wrong. But he shifted his weight, blocking the doorway with his body. "Easy," he said, his voice a low, controlled baritone, meant to calm a spooked animal. "I'm not going to hurt you." "Please," she gasped, her voice cracking with a terror that was too raw, too deep, to be about mere trespassing. "I'm sorry, I'll go. Just don't call the cops. Please." It was the sheer, undiluted fear in that single word that severed his initial impulse to demand answers. This wasn't a delinquent. This was a victim. He saw the ghost of his own past in her desperate eyes, the same look he'd seen in the mirror of a dozen group homes. He slowly held up his hands, palms out. "My name is Max. This is my building." His gaze swept over her careful, pathetic camp. "You can't stay here. It's not safe, and it's freezing tonight." A decision, as impulsive and definitive as any multi-million-dollar deal, solidified in his mind. "You're coming with me. Get your things." The girl, Sierra, she'd whispered, hugged her backpack to her chest like a shield, her eyes wide with a fresh wave of terror at this new, uncertain fate. But the authority in his voice brooked no argument, and the memory of the cold, lonely night outside was a powerful motivator. Silently, she gathered her few belongings, her movements graceful despite her fear, and followed him out into the unknown. We hope you are enjoying this new story of refuge and resilience. If you are, please support our channel by liking this video and subscribing to the Worthington Chronicles for more full-length stories. Let us know in the comments what you think will happen next. The silence in the private elevator was a physical wait. Sierra stood as far from him as possible, her back pressed against the cool metal wall, her knuckles white where she gripped her backpack. She watched the numbers descend with a sinking feeling, each one taking her further from the precarious freedom she'd known, and deeper into the unknown. The elevator didn't stop at a lobby. It descended straight into an underground garage that smelled of wax and expensive fuel. A sleek black car was waiting, a uniformed driver holding the door open. The sheer, unspoken wealth of it all was overwhelming. This wasn't just a man with an apartment. This was a different world entirely. She slid into the plush leather interior, feeling the grime of the construction site on her jeans like a mark of shame. The car moved through the city streets without a sound, a ghost gliding through the rain-slicked night. When it stopped, it was in front of another towering glass monolith. The elevator here, too, was private, opening directly into his home. The penthouse was a vast, breathtaking space of cool marble, floor-to-ceiling windows, and minimalist furniture that looked more like art. It was stunning, sterile, and echoed with a profound, lonely silence. It was the polar opposite of the chaotic, noisy, dangerous home she had fled. Max pointed to a door off the main living area. "Guest room, bathrooms through there. It's locked from the inside." He disappeared into the kitchen and returned a moment later, placing a bottle of water and a banana on the stark glass coffee table. The gesture was so awkward, so devoid of warmth, it was almost comical. "Get some sleep," he said, his voice flat. "We'll talk in the morning." Then he was gone, leaving her standing alone in the center of the cavernous room. Sierra looked from the fruit to the closed door of the guest room. A gilded cage was still a cage. The walls, though made of glass and marble, felt just as confining as the construction site closet. She was trapped, her fate entirely in the hands of a powerful, enigmatic stranger, and the fear that had been her constant companion for 2 years twisted into a new, sharp-edged shape inside her. The morning light was harsh and revealing. Sierra emerged from the guest room, having slept fitfully in the impossibly soft bed, to find Max already at a large dining table, 2 plates of eggs and toast between them. He looked up from a tablet, his expression unreadable. "Sit. Eat," he said, his tone all business. She slid into the chair, her hunger a sharp, gnawing thing. She ate quickly, efficiently, her eyes darting around the room, cataloging exits, assessing threats. He waited until she had finished. "How old are you, Sierra?" The question was direct, a demand for facts. 19, she said, meeting his gaze squarely, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. She pulled a worn but legitimate driver's license from her pocket and slid it across the polished wood. She needed him to know she wasn't a child. He glanced at it, his face betraying no surprise. "You look 16. Who are you running from?" The air left her lungs. She looked down at her empty plate, her shoulders curling inward. "My stepfather," she whispered, the words feeling like a confession of a crime she didn't commit. Max didn't press for the sordid details. The specific horror wasn't necessary yet. The pattern of fear was a language he was fluent in. He saw a reflection of his own past, a kid with no safe port, navigating a world of adult predators. "Here's the deal," he stated, folding his hands. The CEO was back, presenting a contract. "You need a job and a safe place to stay. I'm offering both. A paid internship at my company, Hurst Developments. You'll start at the very bottom. You'll work harder than you ever have, for a wage you'll earn. You'll get a room in my guest house, not here. There will be rules, structure, and 0 special treatment." His eyes held hers, unwavering. "This isn't a handout. It's a trial run. You screw up, you're done. You steal from me, you're done. Understood?" Sierra stared at him, her mind reeling. It was the last thing she'd expected. Not pity, not a sermon, but a challenge. A ladder being offered, one she would have to climb herself, a way to earn her own safety. That flicker of defiance ignited into something else, a fierce, desperate determination. She straightened her spine, squaring her thin shoulders as she met his stern gaze. Understood. The corporate headquarters of Hurst Developments was a temple of quiet efficiency. The air hummed with the sound of focused work, not the chaotic noise Sierra was used to. Dressed in the new simple clothes Max had arranged for, dark trousers and a plain sweater, she felt like an imposter in a world of sharp suits and polished shoes. Max introduced her to Maria, a project manager with a brisk demeanor and intelligent eyes that held no judgment, only assessment. "Sierra is starting an internship. She'll be assisting you." Maria nodded. "Your first task," she said, leading Sierra to a small storage room filled with towering stacks of cardboard boxes, "is to organize these old project files by date and client. It's tedious, but it needs doing. It will also teach you how we structure our projects from inception to completion." Sierra nodded, a wave of relief washing over her. A concrete, manageable task. A place to hide and observe. For hours, she worked in silence, the methodical rhythm of sorting and stacking a strange comfort. As she worked, her mind, sharpened by years of needing to assess situations for danger, began to unconsciously absorb the information. She saw the flow of projects, the standard architectural symbols, the patterns of correspondence. Pulling out a thick set of blueprints for a new retail complex, her eyes caught a discrepancy. A measurement for a load-bearing wall in the basement on one sheet was noted as 14 feet, but the corresponding detail sheet listed it as 12 feet. It was a small error, buried in a sea of lines and numbers, but her survivalist's eye for detail screamed that it was wrong. It would mean a costly last-minute change order and structural reframing. Hesitantly, she gathered the two large sheets and approached Maria's desk. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She pointed to the conflicting numbers. "But this doesn't look right." Maria studied the sheets, her brow furrowing. She pulled up the digital file on her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. A slow, appreciative smile spread across her face. "You're right," she said, looking at Sierra with new respect. "It's not right. The digital file has it at 14, but this plotted sheet is wrong. Good catch, Sierra, a very good catch. You just saved us a major headache down the line." Later, during a project update, Maria mentioned the incident to Max. The new intern, Sierra. She found an error in the Oakwood retail plans, a plotting mistake that would have cost us time and money. Max listened, his expression as inscrutable as ever. But a spark of something, interest, validation, ignited behind his eyes. He had given her a menial task, a test of her basic competence and work ethic. She had not only passed, but had demonstrated a perceptiveness that couldn't be taught. The runaway was proving to be more than just a victim. She was a potential asset. The trial run was becoming something far more compelling. Of course, I will continue the story to its conclusion, ensuring the development of a romantic connection between Max and Sierra, while maintaining the story's core themes of safety and healing. The fragile sense of normalcy shattered a week later. Sierra was organizing files by a window that overlooked the building's delivery bay when a familiar, hulking figure made her blood run cold. Derek. He was there, in a worn leather jacket, talking to a delivery driver, his posture aggressive. He was showing the driver a photo on his phone, a photo of her. She stumbled back from the window, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The world tilted, the solid floor feeling like it might give way. The office walls, which had begun to feel like a sanctuary, now felt like a transparent trap. He was here. He'd found her. Max found her. Minutes later, curled into a tight ball, in the supply closet, her entire body shaking. He didn't ask questions. He simply knelt beside her, his large presence a steadying force in the small, dark space. "It's him, isn't it?" Max's voice was low, a calm center in her storm of panic. "Your stepfather." Sierra could only manage a jerky nod, tears of pure, undiluted terror streaming down her face. The professional distance between them evaporated in that closet. This was human to human. That was all Max needed. The boss was gone, replaced by the protector. By the end of the day, a state-of-the-art security system was installed in the guest house. He handed Sierra a small, sleek panic button. "Keep this on you, always. It's linked directly to me and security." His legal team was already drafting documents, building a case for a restraining order. For the first time since she'd run, someone was fighting back for her. The fear was still a cold knot in her stomach, but it was now shared. She wasn't alone in the dark anymore. That night, the security system created a fragile bubble of safety. Sitting in the guest house with the low hum of the electronics as a backdrop, the dam finally broke. The full, ugly truth she had carried alone for 2 years came pouring out. She told him everything. Not just the running, but the reason. The way Derek's eyes had started to linger too long when she turned 16. The accidental brushes of his hand that became less and less accidental. The leering comments about her body that made her skin crawl. The final terrifying night he'd tried to corner her in her bedroom, his breath smelling of beer, his intentions horrifyingly clear. "I shoved him," she whispered, her voice hollow with the memory. He stumbled back and hit his head on the dresser. It dazed him just enough. "I just ran. I didn't take anything but my backpack. I didn't look back." Max listened in a silence that felt more powerful than any outburst. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply absorbed the horror of her story, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with a cold, quiet fury. When she finished, spent and trembling, he didn't move away. He reached out, his hand covering hers where it lay on the couch between them. The contact was electric, a solid, warm anchor. "He will never touch you again," he vowed, his voice low and absolute. It wasn't a hope. It was a promise. In that moment, Sierra finally believed it. The last of her walls crumbled, not into fear, but into a profound, exhausted trust. The secret was out, and she was not met with disgust or disbelief, but with a fierce, protective loyalty that felt like coming home. The confrontation happened at the wrought iron gate of Max's property a few days later. Sierra was walking home. From the bus stop, the panic button a reassuring weight in her pocket when Derek stepped out from behind a landscaped hedge. "There you are," he snarled, his eyes blazing with a possessive fury. "You think you can hide from me? You belong with me." For a terrifying second, Sierra froze, the old fear threatening to paralyze her. But then she remembered Max's vow. She remembered her own strength. Instead of running, she stood her ground, her voice clear and sharp. "I don't belong to you. Stay away from me." As Derek lunged toward the gate, she didn't hesitate. She pressed the panic button. The response was immediate. A blinding security light flooded the driveway, and a silent alarm summoned both private security and the police. Within minutes, Derek was in handcuffs, his shouts fading as he was driven away for stalking and trespassing. Watching him be taken away, Sierra felt a weight lift from her soul that she had carried for years. The ghost had been made flesh, and flesh could be handcuffed. Later that evening, the adrenaline had faded, leaving a quiet, profound peace in its wake. They stood on the terrace of the main penthouse, the city lights spread out before them like a field of stars. "It's over," Sierra said, the words feeling true for the first time. Max stood beside her, close but not touching. "It's a beginning," he corrected softly. She turned to look at him, really look at him, not as her savior or her boss, but as the man who had seen her at her most broken and had not flinched. The man who had fought for her without asking for anything in return. "Max," she whispered. He turned, his gaze intense in the dim light. The space between them crackled with a tension that had been building for weeks. It was no longer about protection or gratitude. It was something else, something deeper and more terrifying. He lifted a hand, his fingers gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was feather-light, but it sent a shiver through her entire body. "Sierra?" he murmured, her name a prayer on his lips. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. She rose onto her toes to meet him halfway. The kiss was not desperate or frantic. It was a slow, tender exploration, a silent conversation of all the things they couldn't yet say. It was a promise of a future, not just of safety, but of love. When they finally parted, foreheads resting together, the world felt new. The story concludes months later. The air in the conference room at Hurst Developments is bright and focused. Sierra, now a permanent and valued junior project assistant, confidently points to a detail on a set of blueprints. "If we shift this conduit run here, we save 12 feet of materials and a day of labor," she says, her voice assured. Max listens, a quiet pride in his eyes that has nothing to do with business and everything to do with the woman she has become, strong, capable, and radiant. The restraining order against Derek is permanent, and Sierra has her own small apartment, a home she pays for with her own earnings, but her heart has found its home with him. After work, they walk hand in hand through the city park, no longer a billionaire and a runaway, but simply Max and Sierra. Two wounded souls who had chosen to build a new kind of family, not bound by the blood of a painful past, but by the choice of a loving present. He had given her a safe harbor, and in return, she had taught his lonely heart how to finally come home.